Nicole, thank you so much for agreeing to do a shift on the shop floor.
Of course. Happy to be here.
Listen, our incredible listeners can sniff out a good retail story from a mile off. So many of you were tagging us on Nicole's videos that we just had to reach out to you to share your story with the shop floor community.
And I'm happy they did.
Hashtag Selfridges scam.
Hashtag.
That viral hashtag that you created. But first, tell us about your background. I know that you're a fashion and lifestyle commentator, garnering millions of likes and follows across various social media channels, ex-fashion design student, and currently a PhD candidate studying fashion communication. It sounds like Selfridges picked the wrong girl.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so passionate about the fashion industry. So when this was going on, I really wanted to talk about it and do what I could to raise awareness so this doesn't happen to other people.
So where are you from?
I'm from California. I'm based in Dubai, but I'm often in the UK. So that's how this story kind of happened because it all happened within the UK.
And whereabouts in California are you from?
I'm from San Diego. Have you been?
I haven't, but I know San Diego.
Oh, yeah, yeah. It's really nice. It's more low key than LA, but it still has all the Cali vibes, of course.
Yeah, all my friends say that. It's the better of the two, apparently. And so to move to Dubai, that's a huge move. Tell us about that.
So I actually moved to Dubai because I met my husband, who's Emirati, when I was doing my bachelor's in Boston.
You moved for
So
love.
I moved for love. I really didn't know much before moving here. We dated for a long time, but the engagement was quite short. This is a big cultural difference, actually. In America, we're engaged for maybe a year and a half. Emiratis like to do it real quick. So I feel like I really kind of jumped in quickly. We were engaged like maybe 3 or 4 months before moving immediately after. So that's what initially brought me to the UAE. But I'm so happy to be in the UAE. I love it. I love Emiratis. So I feel
Wow.
blessed.
So
Yeah.
exciting. What an adventure.
Yeah, definitely. It's been an adventure. And I think it also really inspired a lot of the content I do because I do a lot of cross cultural types of content on my channels.
Talk to us about that. That sounds really interesting.
Yeah, so I think most people who follow me follow my Name Nicole TikTok, and that's the only channel I have right now where I really talk about my life, more personal things. So that was really inspired because I was this American going through all of these very local kind of experiences in the UAE, which is kind of unique. So I was always interested in kind of sharing the funny stories about, just being a fish out of water and what that's like, and I've actually really loved being able to kind of be a bridge for the two cultures and talk about what it's like being in between. So I think people found that interesting. And that's kind of how it started for me with content.
Is there a large expat community of
Oh, yes, a lot of English people, by the way. I'm sure you know, like so many people
I
who
do,
go to
but
Dubai.
in terms of Americans, is there a big American community too?
I no, I don't, not nearly as big, that's for sure. I haven't actually even met many Americans. The only American I know is my PhD advisor happens to be American. So I'm really I didn't have I don't know, many people who could really understand what it was like kind of going through this really different cultural experience.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
10, 15 years ago, there was a huge boom of retail managers,
Mm,
particularly in luxury, moving over to
mm.
Dubai
Oh yeah.
to command much, much bigger salaries and a tax-free income. And
Definitely.
so many people that I know have created an amazing life there, and they really do love it, as you say.
Definitely. I think, people here, first of all, Emiratis I find to be very welcoming, very kind. And then the expat community, it's a lot of people who just want to, like you're saying, make a better life for themselves. People are very ambitious here. And I like being in this kind of environment a lot. And it's kind of cool to be in between both of the worlds because I also have that kind of ambitious spirit to me. And also, I like some of the traditional values that go on in the local community too. So, yeah, it's definitely an interesting lifestyle. And
I
there's
think
been a lot of, like you're saying, people who moved for retail, and that's really booming here, by the way, especially in luxury.
I think that ambitious spirit is very much alive in the States as well, isn't it? So,
Oh yeah, it is. It kind of gets to a bit of a toxic point in America, I think. I mean, there is like the stereotype Americans kind of live to work. So I think here it is a bit more balanced. What I like here is that it's very innovative in terms of the types of areas people are getting involved in. I mean, you always see news stories about Dubai and the new things coming out, the biggest this, the biggest that. And I just like the spirit of optimism. I like being around that.
yeah, totally. So, you're an ex-fashion design student. Where did you study?
Istituto Marangoni. It's a fashion design school, and they just had opened a campus in Dubai, actually. So, my whole actual fashion interest in fashion started when I started doing my master's, actually. I kind of had this like awakening that if I'm going to do business, because that was my undergraduate, I need to do a business in something I'm super passionate about. So I enrolled in a master's where I did the semiology of fashion. And then when I completed that, I decided to begin doing fashion design as well as the PhD at the same time.
Wow.
When I went in for the fashion design, I wanted to retain as much knowledge as I could. So that way I could launch my own label. And I really loved being a fashion design student. It was just a weird experience to be in my late 20s with a bunch of 18, 17-year-olds.
Yeah.
So I didn't really want all the other stuff that went into fashion design school.
I had the same experience. I went back to uni to do a second undergrad at the age of 35, and
Mashallah.
it's
Very
a
nice.
it's a shock to the system
Oh
being,
my gosh.
in a hall with your peers are 18, 19, 20.
The energy. Oh my gosh, the energy. It was just I could see myself in them when I was that age, but I am definitely not in that stage anymore, as you could probably relate to. But
It
that's
what
funny
it
you
did
did that too.
what it really gave me was huge hope for, well, the UK and for the world. Like, young people are incredible,
Yeah.
inspiring, think outside the box, particularly kind of with sustainability and the environment and where kind of fashion should be going and the way that they shop.
Definitely. I also feel like I was very inspired from the things that they were interested in when I was in fashion design school. And it was interesting just seeing, what inspires them and how they think differently. I think the younger generation, they're much quicker thinkers than the older ones. And so I just always found my conversations with them interesting and I really loved them. I still am friends with them now, but yeah, it was just like a little different being at a different, place in life.
I think that's the fantastic thing about living in London or Dubai, is that amazing melting pot of different cultures that really is so expansive, isn't it? On a daily
Definitely.
basis, you're
Definitely.
forced to expand your views, question your views. Um, you really can't put money on that, can you?
Exactly. And I think, just to where we're going as a society, identity is becoming increasingly blurred. It's not like people are maybe just from one place. Maybe they spend a few years here, a few years there. We get influence from different people in our lives. So I quite love being in a very international society because I think it's reflective in the online culture as well and the people we're talking to. So I think leaning into this ambiguous kind of social identity we're moving towards is really fascinating. And it's just kind of where it's going to continue to go to.
Hmm. Tell me about shopping in Dubai. What's the kind of service like? How does that differentiate to shopping, say, in San Diego?
First of all, you need to come here because I think
Is
you
that
would
an
really.
invite,
It is.
Nicole?
Oh, it's absolutely an invite. By the way, I 100% want to meet you in person one day. I hope.
Oh,
But
same.
yeah, but in Dubai, it is. They're very much customer first. They're
Interesting.
very attentive. Yeah, interesting. They're very attentive. Um, we have a huge mall culture. Maybe you've like heard about our big malls that we have here, and they build them really so big for a couple of reasons. But one of the reasons is just because it's so hot here, and a lot of people actually they do their walks in the mall, they do their socializing in the mall because the AC. So it's really not just a place to shop, but it's a place to socialize. So when you're going into a store, though, they're just very attentive and respectful. there also is a bit of a boundary between personal and professional. I think this is a difference I noticed with American shopping service versus in Dubai. I think they keep it very professional. They don't ask so many personal questions when you're shopping here, but in America, I've gotten that a little bit more.
Yeah, it's there's the summer heat. We get a lot of lovely Middle Eastern
Oh
clients
yeah.
coming over to London in the summer to avoid the heat.
Hmm.
And I have to say, I really enjoy serving Middle Eastern clients.
Oh,
They
good.
are very, very kind, very
Mm,
respectful,
mm,
direct, honest.
yeah.
They're a joy to serve.
I'm glad to hear that because I feel like there is sometimes negative stereotypes with yeah, Arabs in the UAE or in the UK. So I'm happy to hear you have a good
Yeah, I
experience.
certainly have never ever experienced that. And extremely loyal, will
Hmm.
always come back to you, know you by name.
Yeah.
I've built some really amazing client relationships with clients from the Middle East.
Oh, that's good to hear. That's good to
So,
hear.
customer service. The outside perception is that Selfridges is one of the finest luxury stores in the world. How did you become aware of Selfridges?
I honestly think it's just something, as someone who loves fashion, I've always heard about since I was even younger. It's just so iconic. It's been around for so many years, and even when you plan a trip to go to London, that's oftentimes on people's list of something to see, just because of the design, merchandising, how everything, the new brands. It's just exciting, and it's so big. So it's something that was always on my radar, and I've always looked forward to seeing when I'm in London.
In terms of department stores, it is a powerhouse globally.
Mm, mm.
It must be the biggest luxury department store in the world. Was previously owned by the Weston family, Galen Weston. They own Holt Renfrew in Canada. They own Brown Thomas in Ireland. Um, so you had been perusing the Selfridges e-com website. What were you looking at?
Well, it all started because I love Victoria Beckham. I was actually in the store the day before
I've met
buying some of.
Victoria.
Oh, really? How is she?
I've served Victoria. Yeah, she's absolutely lovely.
Oh,
Really,
that's
really,
cool.
really lovely.
I bet you have so many cool retail, like who you've met stories.
I
But
do.
but yeah, so I wanted to check out her makeup. I'm a big fan. I think what she's done with her brand is so cool, so inspiring. She's so multifaceted. So I got some of her liners and some of the lust pots, loved them. And so when I went home, I wanted to order more. Went on the Selfridges website and I added a bunch of her products as well as some dresses. Um, as I mentioned before, I also do fashion education content on my Instagram and YouTube, Nicole Talks Fashion. And I had just covered the drop waist trend. So
Yeah.
I wanted to get a few dropped waist dresses, added those to the cart, and
It's
was
so
excited
easily
for the
done.
order. Yeah, was excited for the order.
So, what did the order total, if you can say? How much had you spent in that particular transaction?
So it was over £1,000. I think I had a setting where I saw everything in dollars. You can shop
Yes.
in dollars. So it was around, I think it was $1,300, something like this.
And Selfridges Online is an unusual beast in the sense that it's a
Mm,
luxury multi brand
mm,
e-com website, but they are not a net-a-porter. That's not how they started. Fundamentally, Selfridges is a bricks and mortar store vying
mm,
for a position in the luxury multi brand e commerce arena. So, with that in mind, and you knowing that Selfridges is a physical store, a luxury store
mhm.
that should be offering exceptional customer service, was your assumption that that would be mirrored across onto their e-com offering?
Absolutely. I had made a larger order before. It was a few years before, but it had been a while. I didn't have an issue in that order several years prior. So I was not expecting, obviously, there to even possibly be a problem with something like this, especially because it was, I give the delivery man a code. He comes to the door. So I didn't think there could be at any point a possibility of theft.
So, you placed the order,
Hmm.
you are waiting for the delivery. The delivery arrives at your house in Dubai. And
No,
what?
no, in the UK.
Oh, in the UK. So you're
It
in
was
the
in the
UK,
UK.
you've ordered, you're having it delivered in the UK.
Yeah, I often go to the UK because we have a flat actually in Brighton,
Oh, I love
Brighton
Brighton.
and Hove. Yeah, I love it so much. We have a flat there because my husband's father learned English there in the 70s and had bought a flat. So we
Fanta-
always go and we
fa-
love it.
fantastic independent shopping in Brighton. I'm always
Mm,
saying to Jasmine, we must get some independent retailers on from Brighton because they're doing
mm.
really cool, interesting things.
They really are. I love how artistic they are. Mm.
So you received your delivery, and at what point were alarm bells ringing?
Okay, so when the guy came to deliver it, it was interesting because he placed it down. It's not like he handed it to me. He set it down and he immediately asked for the code. So, I mean, of course, I'll just give him the code and then he walked away. I took my box. I felt like it was light, but in my mind, of course, I did not go towards theft. And I also thought sometimes in large orders, it's multiple boxes.
Yes, often,
Yeah.
often.
Oftentimes it's multiple boxes. So I thought maybe they put the makeup in here only and that's why it's so light, something like this. And so I was a little bit like, huh, weird. But I didn't think anything totally wrong at that
And
point.
when you open the box, you'd actually filmed the
Mm.
footage because you do a lot of unboxings to share with your community. Is that right?
Yeah, actually, I was. It wasn't even me filming. It was a cousin. I had a few people in the room when this happened too, so I will have witnesses
You've
to
got
this.
witnesses.
Yeah, but it was actually my husband's cousin who was filming, and she was trying to encourage me to do more YouTube personal content because people like my personal content a lot. I only do personal stuff on TikTok at this point. So I was like, okay, maybe I'll try to get into YouTube and like do some unboxings there like I do on my TikTok. And I began unboxing. I when I picked up, I'm like, wait, this is weirdly light.
So
I
tell
kind
me
of
again
more,
what's meant to be inside this box, this
yeah,
£1,000 haul.
yeah. It's meant to be. I think it was like 4 or 5 eyeliners, two of the makeup pots, so that's on the lighter end. I think it was 5 dresses
Okay.
and a pair of shoes.
You would feel the weight of those, I'm assuming.
Definitely. I would notice that. So I'm like, okay, obviously not everything is in here when I'm like moving this around. And I'm thinking maybe I'm just getting the makeup right now.
Hmm.
And so then I begin to try to open it and I realized this is kind of weirdly sealed at the top. There was no damage on the box itself, but there was a kind of an odd, well, when I open it, it just like flew off and I'm like, this is really odd.
Yeah, so when I watched your first hashtag Selfridges scam video and I watched the footage of the box being opened, I've worked in e-com fulfillment before
Hmm.
and I've worked in e-com customer service and I bought from Selfridges a lot. I recognized the packaging. It to
Yeah.
me it looked kosher. It
Mm.
didn't look like it had been tampered with,
Yeah.
but I can understand how mentally you're trying to connect the dots. You're like, this feels very light.
Hmm.
You're opening the box. You're like, has this been tampered with in some way? So you open the box, and what's inside?
Nothing. Nothing is in the box. There's nothing in the box. There's a couple pieces of paper. It is completely empty. And I'm shocked. And it was funny because I got a lot of not questions, comments on the first video being like, that reaction is so fake. I know the reaction. And it's like sometimes when something is so genuine, it
you are
looks corny.
you're
It
just
looks corny
also
because I'm shocked.
you're just kind of at a loss.
Yes.
There is no emotion to register. You're like, what's going on?
Like, should I act less shocked? Like, I don't know what I should have done, but that was just a raw reaction.
So if that had happened to me, obviously I would be shocked. But my first thing that would enter my mind would be, let's jump online, contact customer services, and find out what's going on. So what did you do?
I did exactly that. Jumped online, got the number for their customer service, and I immediately called them. Yeah.
And what did they say about your empty box?
They actually were not as apologetic as I thought they would be. I actually felt like they already had a idea in their mind that I was even guilty. So I remember her asking, like, didn't you notice the box was light? Like, like, kind of interrogating me with these questions. And I'm like, I'm trying to report that there was nothing in this box. And I
Mm.
feel like this is being flipped on me immediately. So I said, like, there needs to be something done here. And she said, okay, we will do a thorough investigation. It will take up to 48 hours.
Okay, very quick. So that's putting your mind at rest.
Yeah, I didn't think anything. I'm like, great. I know I'm innocent, so of course they're gonna figure this out. I heard about all the CCTV footage and the security that you guys do in the UK, so I
Mm.
really didn't feel worried.
But at that first point of contact, you felt perhaps that there was an implication that it was you that.
A little bit, yeah, yeah. And I had my cousin and my husband in the room there too, and they were also like, "This is a weird call." Like they were making faces like how she was talking to me, and
I mean, from my background in e-com customer services, they are dealing with a huge amount of as what they call soft fraud,
mm,
where people will purchase something online, they'll say they didn't receive it, they'll say they partially received an order in order
yeah,
when really they received the entirety of the
hmm,
order, and they're
I can understand
basically
that.
trying to scam the retailer. But at that
Yeah,
first point of contact, when
hmm,
you're raising the alarm, actually doing them a favor,
hmm,
you would assume that they would have a protocol in terms of customer service where the client doesn't feel that they are in any way being accused
one
whilst
hundred
this
percent.
48-hour investigation is going on.
100%. And just to speak on that, I thought this, I mean, when this happens to you, you feel shocked, obviously, and you're a bit emotional, like, I can't believe my order is empty.
It's a
I was
thousand
looking
pound.
forward to it.
We're talking £1,000 here.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah. So I thought the call would be more like, we're so sorry. We will look into it and do an investigation and perhaps do a follow up call with me to ask these questions because I do understand theft is an issue, like you're mentioning on the other side as well.
So 48 hours passes and Selfridges are reaching out.
No, they didn't reach out via call or anything. They did send the email though, saying that they concluded through a thorough investigation that they didn't do anything wrong, so they will not issue a refund.
That is bonkers.
It's bonkers, and it was interesting because a lot of people have since DM'd me that everyone gets that same exact email word for word.
And how did that make you feel receiving that?
I was shocked. I'm like, oh no, honey. I know I'm innocent. I know I'm innocent, so this is not ending here.
So
Yeah.
at this point, are you taking to TikTok? Are you thinking,
Mm-mm.
how do I out them? Talk
No.
me through that timeline.
No, I know the impact of TikTok. I know the vibes. I know the girlies, and I know if it
Millions,
goes.
Nicole has millions of likes, hundreds of thousands of followers. You hold a lot of power there.
Yeah, I know that if it goes on TikTok, there will be a reaction because I've never ever done negative stuff like this. My content is very positive, and whenever I've done content that's somewhat controversial, it goes very because they know me. They know I don't do this type of stuff. I don't talk like this on my TikTok. So I actually tried everything I could prior than going to TikTok where I have my most followers.
Yeah.
I didn't want it to go this way. I really didn't want it to go this way.
So at what point does it go that way?
It goes that way when they ignore your emails, they double down, the investigation has no relation to actual theft, and they stop responding to me. That's what happened, and that's what it took for me to go to TikTok. It was days of me trying to reach out and say, let's do a call. Let's talk about this because this was not the right conclusion. I went on my other platforms that have much less followers, some that are even less than 500, just because I didn't want it to become this huge scale thing. I don't like doing negative content on my TikTok.
Yeah. So how much time did you leave from them basically saying that no, they're not at fault to you posting that initial TikTok? And tell our listeners what that TikTok looked like.
Yeah, so it was, I think, a total of 4 days of nothing. After sending 2 emails within those 4 days, there was no response. And this had already been after a bit of back and forth. So then I'm like, okay, well, if this is happening to me, this actually must be a bigger problem That was
Mm.
something that also clicked for me, because if you once you know you're innocent about something like this, you know that this is probably something other people have experienced as well. So I made the TikTok, and the way I started it was saying Selfridges scammed me, and I want to know if they're scamming you too. And a lot of people said that, yeah, that actually happened to me as well.
So talk to us about that response. Had people experienced exactly what you had experienced? I mean, I'm sure there was a huge breadth
There
of
was.
kind of experience in terms of of your listeners' customer interactions.
Mm-hmm.
But were there viewers reaching out saying that they had received empty boxes?
Mm-hmm. Yes, there were people who got also did large orders like mine as well, and some even smaller orders too, where the boxes come and they're completely empty. And it was the same exact scenario as what I went through. I also learned about other experiences that are a bit scammy, where, for example, this one woman DM'd me and she was like, I ordered a Cartier bracelet. So that's like, so yeah, it was like over 7,000 pounds.
Oh
And
God.
they sent the wrong size. So I returned it back to exchange it for the right size, and they wouldn't accept the return. They said it was damaged. And I got a lot of DMs saying that, when I try to return something, they claim it's damaged, even though I know it's not damaged. So
I
I
had a
end up paying
friend.
for it.
I had a friend who had exactly the same issue, but this was in store and a number of years ago. She purchased a coat, an expensive coat. I'd probably say it was 2-3 thousand. Purchased it from the rack, and then decided to return the coat. They refused the return. They said that the coat had been worn. She was like, "Of course it's been worn. It's been tried on multiple times off the hanger."
Yeah.
They dug their heels in. They said they'd sent it off for independent testing, that it had been worn, and she never received a refund.
Oh my gosh.
My argument is, who was quality checking that when she purchased it, looking for
Mm,
whether it had been shop soiled? How
mm,
can they argue that it wasn't returned in the condition that it was sold when, as you and I both know, Selfridges employs thousands of people?
mm,
There isn't a quality control check at the point of
mm,
purchase.
mm.
So other people have been saying the same things. I mean, a Cartier bracelet, to have a return refused on that, that's an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, a nightmare. And I think what you pointed out on what needs to be done with quality checks is such a great point and such a great suggestion, because that definitely needs to happen. There's just not enough protection, I think, for consumers, which is making this a bigger problem in e-commerce.
So you posted this video on TikTok. In your
Mhm.
mind, did you know that it would blow up to the degree that it does? For context, Nicole's videos often garner more than 1 million views. But I think this one hit, what was it, nearly 2 million views?
I didn't check today, but I think it's maybe a
Just
little under 2 million or something. Maybe it's at 1.6 or something like this right now. I don't know. That was yesterday. It
so it
changes.
causes a huge reaction.
Yeah, and I didn't know how it would perform, because sometimes you post things and they do really well, sometimes it's just nothing, and you never know. And this, I'd never done a post like this before. Um
And the point to the post wasn't about performance, was it? It was the
no.
fact that you weren't getting anywhere with
Yeah.
Selfridges customer services, and you thought, I have this tool, this audience at
Mm,
my disposal. So let me jump on here and see if this forces Selfridges to act. What happens
exactly.
then?
Yeah, so I try to post here, and I also did want to know if this is a unique thing or a bigger issue. I didn't want this to happen to other people too. I know the nightmare that I've gone through with this experience. So after posting and it getting viral, now people are kind of in my corner because they can see the receipts, they hear the story, um, and they begin actually going to Selfridges social pages and saying refund Nicole using the
Brilliant.
hashtag. And
Brilliant.
it really becomes kind of like a little movement.
It's
And
a
I really
David,
appreciate
but it's a
that.
David versus Goliath, isn't it? It's,
I guess so.
customer warriors that,
Mm,
are on your side and not on the side of these big corporations.
mm.
So, did they respond to your TikTok, and how did they reach out?
So after it initially published, I don't think they did not come to me immediately. It took a few more posts. I did a couple afterwards for a couple more days, and even those were also getting a lot of views. It just kind of was just growing and growing. And then they reached out to me just last Sunday about issuing an automatic refund.
So, in your mind, what are you thinking has happened in this scenario? You're obviously, Selfridges aren't being forthcoming, and I assume that you're trying to connect the dots. Think, how could this have happened?
How could this have happened? I also felt a lot of disappointment getting an email that they automatically refunded me. And I just kept thinking, like, okay, but are you really guys looking into this? Because it's not just me at this point. I only got this refund because it went viral. I don't even know if they fully acknowledged what their problem is. In my mind, they have a major issue going on that is being I think a lot of people must be in on this if it's gotten to this scale and they treat customers consistently like this, or clearly they don't have enough checks to figure out where the actual thief is coming from, and they just continuously blame customers. It's a big issue.
I think, again, because of my background and the way that retailers now
Mm,
are increasingly omni-channel, so they're selling in store, they're selling
mm-hmm,
on their website, they're selling through a third-party platform, say Farfetch.
mm-hmm,
So often in these omni-channel scenarios where their main business is bricks and mortar, oftentimes it's employees, sales staff on the shop floor
mm-hmm,
packing online orders. But when, Jasmine and I talk so often about severe understaffing now on the shop floor,
mm,
that the team are overworked, that they're not necessarily properly trained. So when I'm watching your videos, I'm almost trying to see it from Selfridge's perspective.
yeah.
I'm like, how could this have happened? Because I know that mistakes do happen. There was one store that I worked where it was in store and we would sell, so the website would pull from the store stock, which I know from many of our listeners is kind of the norm now. We'd have one person pulling the items from the stock room, another person packing the orders, another person sealing and putting the shipping label on. And I'm like, and we did make mistakes. We
Yeah,
did make mistakes. We would send out the wrong item, we would miss an item. And I'm
mm,
like, I could actually see how we could send a box without anything in. And there is
totally.
there is a smoking gun here, isn't there? Your friend reached out to
Mm.
you and said, check the shipping label.
Yes, I will talk about that. I want to comment on what you just said. Um, I do completely recognize mistakes can happen, human errors, things like this. What shocked me though is a consistent protocol to find a way to blame customers without fully actually knowing for sure if it is the customer or not.
It sounded
So
like a copy and paste job, that there was no internal investigation happening at all. Was that your feeling?
exactly. That was exactly my feeling. And I just felt that it was so important that they had actual evidence to blame a customer than just finding ways to deduce it being the customer. That was my biggest problem, and how the customer support handled it and how investigations go on.
Wild.
Yeah, wild. Anyways, so yes, the smoking gun, the weight. So after I had been getting a lot of these emails going nowhere with Selfridges, I was like, what do I do, guys? Because they're saying their final position is no refund.
So you're reaching out to your community saying what,
Just on
basically?
Instagram to my
Okay.
personal friends. No, I
Okay.
have an Instagram that's like less than 500 people, of just people that I know, and I had been sharing it with them what had been going on. And my friend said, check the weight. This has actually happened to me with a different retailer before, and the weight is what really, like, there's nowhere to go from that. So I
Determines the contents of the box, right?
yeah, you'd think. And so I go to check the weight because I kept the box. I knew the package was funny. I knew like it could be used in the future if I needed it to take a picture of how it was, which I took a lot of pictures. And I went to go check at the weight, and I saw that the weight was zero point 0.1 kg, which was absolutely impossible for the order size.
So the weight of the box. So
Yeah.
that, I think I remember commenting on your video, and I think, well, that's case closed.
Hmm.
That shipping label has been applied by a Selfridges employee or a fulfillment company, whoever they use, a third party, at the
Hmm.
point of packing, the point of labeling your order. That box had nothing inside it. So surely this is emboldening you now that, okay, this is the hard evidence. And you
Yeah.
take that to Selfridges?
Yes, I immediately, this is before TikTok still. They had stopped talking to me for a few days. And then I had this new evidence. And I'm like, okay, guys, this joke's over.
Yeah.
I have the weight evidence now. And I'm also upset that they didn't check something like that. You'd think that'd be the first thing they check if you're
I'm
investigating.
confident now that that will be hopefully introduced as their protocol, but we'll talk about LANs for Selfridges in a
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah. So I just said, is this your final position on this case? And I just sent them a picture of the weight. Didn't get a response from that. So I was also frustrated that I have new evidence and you're still not talking to me. And then I sent them a follow-up email 4 days later, and then I waited, or 3 days later, or 4 days. And then the next day, when I realized they're not going to respond to me still, that's the day I posted on TikTok.
What blows my mind about this is you've already posted a video to TikTok that's gone viral. You've now posted a number of videos.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, customer services and the marketing team behind the scenes are now in communication. We know that this is happening. How do we deal with this issue? It's blowing up across socials. It's now beyond a customer service issue. It's now an issue of kind of, how do I explain this? It becomes a marketing problem, doesn't
Oh
it?
yeah, major
About
PR problem.
PR, that's the
100%.
word, about perceptions around Selfridges and their service.
100%. And I actually think even more people were involved than just PR. I think because I have this thing called Streak, which is an email tracking add-on you can put in your Gmail. So you can see how many individual people view your emails.
No way.
Yeah, so I could see every email going on had between 20 to 50 individual people looking at it. So this
So
was way beyond just PR or just customer service.
what is wild is that, 20 to 50 people are looking at that and nobody takes a decisive action to think, let's put this to bed and let's bring this to a resolution.
Well, I started doing the email tracking. I will clarify. Once they said we're going to issue a refund.
Okay.
And then when I came back to them and said, okay, thank you, but let's be so for real. You did this because the video went viral. What about all the other people? Like, what are you guys going to change about that?
I think
And
that's
then I
what
could see.
sorry. I think that's
No,
what
then I could see.
I think that's what I loved about your videos because it became bigger than you. And almost you kind of dug your heels in because you're like, hold on a minute, this is happening to other people too. What are you going to
Yeah.
do to correct this? So when you go with this evidence that it's zero point 0.1 kilos, do they finally acknowledge that they were at fault?
So they never responded when I gave them that evidence. They only responded when the video went viral. That was the piece that made them respond. It was never the weight. It was never anything before. It's not an unboxing video. It's nothing else. It's not like swearing to God to them, like I didn't steal this product. It's nothing. It was just the fact that it went viral. That's what made them give me a refund.
So what that screams at is that they're more interested in PR than their customers.
That's what didn't sit right with me. And I wasn't going to be all happy. Thank you so much. You're so great for giving me a refund now. Like, we know why you did this. And it really damages my trust with you as well as many people. And I am not a malicious person. It's not like I had any kind of intent to cancel Selfridges permanently. I don't really believe in cancellation. I think if you take accountability and make appropriate actions, I do think redemption can happen. So I actually wanted them to come out of this like a better company. And that was maybe very naive of me, but that was what I would hope would happen. But when you're dealing with such a huge company, there now becomes, I think, a legal stress for them taking ownership of something like this. Yeah. And the fact that they already issued the refund, I don't think I have legal grounds anymore.
No, I mean, from my reading into it, it's the contractual obligation begins at the point of purchase. You've purchased the item, they have a contractual obligation to fulfill that. But if they can't fulfill the order, their contractual obligation alone is
Yes.
to refund the item.
Yes.
Oftentimes I think that consumers think that they have more power than they do. I suppose a good example is when something is mispriced on the shop floor. There is an assumption in the UK that if something's mispriced, that the retailer has to sell it at that price. And it simply isn't the case. The law accounts for human error, and the product can just be pulled from the floor.
Totally.
But this goes beyond that now. Your videos, a number of videos have had millions of views. They've refunded the product. But what have they done to really make this right? So you still feel that you haven't been heard.
That's the thing. And that's why I actually thought this approach would be a positive thing. I know 100% I'm not entitled for them to, do these different action items that I hope they would to make it better for them too. It was really just, okay, you guys are in a really bad situation. I know this, you know this. It doesn't need to stay this way. And I'm even willing to like work with you guys to, just on behalf of consumers to know that you guys are actually making changes and acknowledging things, so this doesn't happen again, because at this point there's no trust for me and you, there's no
Mm.
trust with other customers. And to be honest, the fact that I had to make this a part-time job just for a refund of an empty box is ridiculous.
And
So that's the thing. What you're saying is, what are they going to do to make this right? They need to acknowledge that this was not just, you know having to go through the process and get a refund. It was in a huge extent to get a refund.
in my mind, the correct course of action would have been to release a statement at this point,
Mm-hmm.
address you were being helpful by saying, look, point A, point B, point C,
Yeah.
you could do these things to help. What were those things that you were asking of them?
Yeah, they were all things centered around making sure the process is one that is legitimate and doesn't default to blaming customers. So I gave suggestions on the weight tracking, making sure that is accurate and you're looking into these things. I also gave suggestions on customer support, on how customers actually feel supported,
Yeah,
and
don't
making, yeah,
don't
making
basic
appropriate changes. Yeah.
don't basically accuse us until you've done your full investigation. Would be a
Right.
start.
Yeah, and I also wanted to do a call with them so I could explain the box, because I wanted them to understand how it was bypassing detection, because it did look perfect on the outside, but that's not enough, because clearly there was a seal, there's some sort of seal thing going on. So I wanted to
Mm.
describe to them the seal, and
You
even I
wanted
could
to,
send
you literally wanted to help them
I
with
wanted to
their
help them.
investigation.
I actually wanted to help them because I didn't want this to happen to other people. And I felt that I had an important perspective as a consumer that could really be beneficial for them to make this better. And I also said, I think you guys need to be transparent about this and talk about it on socials, because there is no trust right now. I need the reassurance, and many other people need the reassurance. It feels like you're kind of just brushing this under the rug and hoping it goes away, but that's not how trust is built. So I gave these suggestions, and when the response did not acknowledge any type of understanding of these suggestions, which I had like an emotional reaction to, because I thought it was so ridiculous. I couldn't even get a phone call with them after this whole ordeal.
I think this is a really important point and something that we've covered in the past. Very recently, I received incredible customer service from a electrical store in the UK. But at one point, I had to then liaise with the online customer service. And that's where all of the service, this amazing service that I received in store, fell down
Mm.
because I just needed to speak to a human.
100%. 100%. It just felt so dry. And the amount of energy I put into this to not get any type of personal message back, or compassion, or, just empathizing with the situation, none of that, it really didn't sit right with me. And it definitely didn't rebuild any kind of confidence with their brand. So that part shocked me.
I think what blows my mind is that luxury e-commerce is very much an embattled sector, as I'm sure as you know. Matches collapsed very recently. Farfetch was saved from collapse. Um, and Richemont is still trying to offload Yoox Net-a-Porter, which also owns Mr. Porter. Selfridges have a real opportunity here, as the market's these key players in the market are distressed or
Mm-hmm.
disappearing. Selfridges, for the first time, really, since they entered the e-commerce, the luxury multi-brand e-commerce, has an opportunity to become a leader. And what I would say about shop not that regularly on Mr. Porter, the service is always impeccable, impeccable. Um, and this is where Selfridges is falling down. What a
Yeah.
missed opportunity.
It makes such a big difference. You know, if I'm having a good customer experience, I'm so much more likely to want to continue shopping there too. You know, Selfridges, they ship everywhere. I would have been, if this was a positive experience, I would have been open to shopping with them more. But at the end of the day, when you don't make it a positive experience for your consumer, you lose out on them long term. And that's what really this whole thing surprises me because, like you're saying, such a great point. It's a huge missed opportunity. You know, I wanted the best for Selfridges too because as someone who loves fashion, loves the industry, I really admire a heritage brand like Selfridges and what they mean for the UK. You know, I didn't want it to be like this, but at the end of the day, if this is how you treat your customers and if this is a consistent problem, I have to just speak what my experiences is and the truth so that this does not happen for other people.
Brands need to be centering customer service. You know,
100%.
if they're supposedly committed to customer retention, it literally needs to be the fundamental pillar of their business.
100%.
So, you know, what really shocked me is you got, I suppose you got the outcome that you needed
Yeah, I
and
got the refund.
obviously deserved. You got the refund.
Mhm.
But then troublingly, when you received confirmation of this refund, there was almost an element of intimidation within that. Talk to our listeners about that.
Yeah, so in the email, there was a clause that I could not share the context of the email or distribute it, talk about what exactly is in the emails because it is like sensitive information owned by Selfridges. I'm not a lawyer. I also have no idea about what UK laws are like in terms of
Also,
this regard.
also, if it's owned by Selfridges and it's sensitive information, why the hell are they sharing it with the consumer?
Yeah.
Your contract has ended. You've received the refund.
And I still to this day don't know if I'm obligated to honor these clauses. I have no idea, but I also just didn't want to risk any type like being in the wrong in any way. I respect the law. I'm not trying to overstep anything, but it is not necessarily confirming my trust in your brand that you're now putting these clauses and making it a bit, you know, confusing and less transparent for me.
Nicole, oh, in 2024, are we not moving beyond silencing victims here? I mean, I know we're
I'd hope
talking
so.
about e-commerce, but they, in that, it was an email, I'm assuming,
Yeah. We've
are
only done email communication.
so at that point, they are flexing their legal muscles.
Mm.
They are asserting their dominance in the situation, and they are going one step further and basically threatening you with legal implications if you now don't stop talking about this. How does that make you feel? You know, they had such an opportunity to make this right.
Yeah. Oh, I
You
gave
res-
them an easy out. I gave them an easy out of this whole thing.
where does that leave you now? You know, having received that email, will you ever shop with Selfridges again?
Well, Timothy, I have a bad taste in my mouth. You can put it like that. It would have meant a lot to even just get a call and go through some of the things that I raised, and they could explain why it's not possible, even explain like how they could be in a legal vulnerability, talking about certain areas. I would have really understood that. I'm not I'm not trying to be strategic here and checkmate them. I want the best in the fashion industry for consumers, for Selfridges. I had no intent to be malicious, and the trust is not received back. You know, it. I don't even know if they felt compassion towards me in the situation just because the emails were so dry. So it didn't feel right. It didn't
You
feel
were a
that after
number.
everything. Yeah, I'm a number. It didn't feel well. It's interesting because I was a number, but I also know that I became more than just a customer. It now became this. This is a like someone publicly speaking about these issues. So at first, my initial reaction was from a consumer perspective, like, "Wow, this is how they treat their customers." You know, when they need a refund. And after reflecting for a little bit, I had to kind of put on my corporate hat on and realize I'm not just a regular customer at this point. I'm someone who's publicly talking about this,
You're a
and
threat to the business.
I'm threatening their perception, and so of course they're going to need to go about things a little more carefully. But it just didn't feel right in the ways in which they did that, and it didn't reassure me that anything was actually ever happening. I never saw any type of report that they even did an investigation.
But rule number one in PR, I've never studied PR, surely in my mind is how do we de escalate this
Yeah.
situation? De escalation. The same in
Yes.
customer service. You know, you've posted a number of videos, you've got your
Mm-hmm.
refund. They had such a golden opportunity to think, actually, we messed up on this one. We really messed up. Let's refund Nicole. Let's apologize and let's provide her with a store credit for the value of her purchase. You, I, am I right? Would then have jumped on to TikTok and said, guys, result.
Well, it's hard to talk about anything actually because the clauses in their emails, So all I can really say is that it felt very dry and nothing. I didn't talk to anyone. I didn't see any kind of. There was no like, oh, let me give her this credit or do this. There was nothing in that aspect that was communicated. So it just, yeah, the whole thing didn't sit right, and yeah, I still honestly am a little shocked that it all went like this.
It's wild.
100%.
It's absolutely wild that no manager at any point thought, we need to intervene here and
Right.
make this right.
And again, I wanted it to be right. I wanted it to be right because I really respect heritage brands. I think they mean a lot to nations, and I wanted Selfridges to be coming out on top on this. But doesn't that tell you something though, that this is beyond PR? This is more legal. So that indicated to me that they kind of are now aware. You know what? We actually do have a problem, and if we talk about this and if we acknowledge this, we could have bigger legal problems. So to me, it was an indication this is beyond PR. We have to actually just protect the business fundamentally right now.
And both you and I, as we've spoken, were trying to find plausible reasons as to why this could have happened in error. But in
Mm-hmm.
reality, I think it speaks to potential issues within the fulfillment
Mm-hmm.
department of potential theft by people
Mm-hmm.
fulfilling orders and just packing an empty box and sending it to a client. That has huge implications for them as an employer,
Mm-hmm.
um, and potentially, sorry, criminal implications for
Right.
is there theft happening within this business. So I can understand how Selfridges at this point are like, we need to shut this down because there are far-reaching implications for us internally as a
Exactly.
business.
Exactly, exactly. And I will say, although I'm really disappointed how it feels very dry, the compassion and everything from my perspective, I have gotten many DMs from the same people who told me that they were having the same issue
Oh,
as
tell me
me.
they've got refunds now.
Now they're getting refunds.
Woo!
Now they're getting refunds. And getting those messages feels so amazing because I can see now there is some accountability happening. Maybe they just cannot actually vocalize it. So it did give me hope that they are taking this seriously, at least from the refund perspective. I really do hope there is a true investigation happening where they're thinking about how do we create better systems so this doesn't happen again, or how do we monitor theft better, and having those really serious conversations because now the cat's out of the box. We
Literally
know
out
the
of the
cat
empty box, Nicole.
out of the empty box. Period. 100%. And so this is not something they can continue cover up. I feel like people in the future, if they have this happen again, they're going to post about it now because it's been talked about. They'll talk about it, and it's just nothing you can keep covering up. It won't work consistently.
I think what this speaks to so beautifully is the power of social media. Oftentimes we talk about social media now in such a negative light, but
Mm-hmm.
what you have done with your incredible community, your determination is actually, this has turned into a real result for,
Mm.
I mean, not you really, I wouldn't say, but for your listeners to have also been banging their head against
Yeah.
the Selfridges door,
Yeah.
and for you to have outed this problem, and for other consumers, your followers, to say, finally, we've got a
100%.
result.
100%. Although I hated going through all this, I'm really happy that I went the way I did, in terms of talking about it openly, going the media route, and also emailing them, saying I'm actually not okay with just a refund. Like, you guys really need to address this from a core perspective, figure out what it is so this doesn't happen to consumers. I really pushed them in the emails to take accountability. And I think having a strong position like this and having it sent and seen to so many people in the organization, I think they did have to reflect internally. And I'm just so happy people are getting refunds.
What a result. I
Yeah,
think
I'm
so
proud.
often our listeners think, God, what's Tim's problem with Selfridges? And I'm thinking, I'm sure Selfridges think the same. But the point is, Selfridges is such a cultural touch point for so many of us in the UK and globally. Either we worked there, we knew someone that worked there, we've shopped there, it's a
Mm.
heritage store. There are limitless ways in which to talk about Selfridges because it is so dominant. And, the conversation will continue, I'm
Mm.
sure. But I think fundamentally, it's been so nice to chat to you.
Oh, it's been
Thank
so
you
great talking to you
so
too.
much for sharing your story with
Of
us and
course.
very much for giving our listeners, and I'm sure your followers too, the real kind of the breadth of the issue rather than just
Mm.
sharing on a shorter TikTok, the implications,
Yeah,
the broader implications for
right.
service.
And I will say too, they actually, the way the communication left off, and I haven't checked to see if they responded. They usually respond around this time. So I know their email schedule, but they ended the last conversation saying, "Come in store, and you can talk to our management. We can talk about this in person."
That sounds scary.
So it does. It does. It does sound like, okay, what is the purpose of this? Is this because you really want to hear me out? Because that's what I have been wanting, or is
Mm,
this more? Is there something else where you're trying to make it up to me in another way? And I still don't really know. All I wanted in this situation was them to take accountability and make sure it doesn't happen. So
mm.
I still don't know if I'm going to meet them in person and talk about this. They said I could come at any date in the future and they'd be willing to talk to me. I don't know. I really don't know.
What a missed opportunity by Selfridges to address consumers' concerns, reassure consumers it won't happen again, and to highlight Selfridges' ongoing commitment to improving customer service.
Yeah, period. 100%. And I hope they look at this in the future, or even really look at it now and think, how can we do better in the future? I'm not somebody who believes in permanent cancellations. New people come in the business all the time. I'm sure there's some great people who work at Selfridges. I did hear some funny stories from your podcast about Selfridges, but I'm forever an optimist and hope it changes. But at this stage, how can we trust them with e-commerce, until we see otherwise?
And at what point, I suppose the last point is for our listeners and for consumers that are maybe concerned that this would happen again, would you advise them to be putting this onto a credit card so that there are further protections?
100% use a credit card. I used a credit card and I actually thought, I think my credit card will be good about this for a refund, but I was so shocked they wouldn't just issue a refund after all this data and stopped responding to me. So that's when I was like, let me talk about this and understand if this is a wide problem that everyone is having to go to their banks to have
Mm.
this sorted when there's this fundamental issue. Definitely use your credit card. It is a very important backup in situations like these.
Well, Nicole, the cat's out of the box now, the
It
empty
is.
box.
It's out of the empty box. And I want to say thank you so much for having me on your podcast. You are so good at this, by the way. You're such an amazing podcast host. And I really enjoyed answering your questions.
That's so sweet. Thank you so much. It's a steep learning curve, and I still every day feel like an imposter. But
No, no, you're not an imposter in anything.
it
You're really, really good at this. And I mean that.
that's sweet, and it makes it so much easier having a lovely guest like you. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.